think that he has set a very poor standard. I think that he has set a very low bar, and I think it's a shame for the African-American people. And by the way, he has done nothing for African Americans. You look at what's gone on with their income levels, you look at what's gone on with their youth. I thought that he would be a great cheerleader for this country. I thought he'd do a fabulous job for the African American citizens of this country. He has done nothing. They are worse now than just about ever.
All right, folks, that was Donald Trump, of course, and you know, he's got it right. But don't fear, because Barack Obama today, when he talked about climate change, talked about how he's going to save black kids from getting asthma. That's right, because climate change causes asthma. Larry Elder, radio host of The Larry Elder Show, author of Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours, joins us along with David Goodfriend, Democratic strategist, former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Clinton. So, Larry, I heard you chuckle. I mean, not only that, then he went into to talk about how tomorrow's his birthday, which we really needed to know, Obama. And then he talked about how when he was 18 and he got off a plane to go to college in L.A., people couldn't breathe in the streets. I think a lot has changed air quality-wise since he was 18. But to bring up that black kids are getting asthma because of climate change is insane.
I'd like to believe that Donald Trump read my last piece, Steve. The black middle class is worse off now than when Obama took over. Black people are worse off than when Obama took over. Poverty is up. Unemployment, when you take into consideration the labor force participation rate, hasn't been this bad since 1977. Incomes are down. Net worth is down. The so-called wealth gap between blacks and whites is at a 25-year high. All of this under Obama's administration in exchange for their 95% vote. It'd be one thing, Steve, if most black people voted for Obama just out of racial pride, but most black people voted for Obama the same as most non-blacks did, and that is they thought he was going to improve the economy. He has not. Black income down, middle class down, net worth down, home ownership down, equity down. My goodness, he's done everything but take a baseball bat to the black community.
So, David, do you agree with Larry, or do you and Donald Trump, or do you think Obama's done good for the black community?
Well, you'd be shocked to learn that I disagree with Donald Trump. So stop the presses there. I think this discussion has to be framed in the starting point time-wise, and we have to ask ourselves, are we starting from just before the economic collapse?
Oh, give me a break. David, as Larry said, since he's been president, all these things have happened.
I thought I was still talking. You want me to keep talking, or you want me to stop?
You can keep talking, but okay. To say, to blame it on Bush is really pathetic.
If we look at when those numbers were the best, that is, there was the least difference between African-American incomes and white incomes. It actually happened in the late 90s, towards the end of the Clinton presidency. And if you look at when they got to be the worst, it was at the height of the recession.
No, they're the worst now. They're the worst now, Larry just said.
Let me finish. So if we're talking about, for example, access to health care, the Affordable Care Act has actually increased the number of...
All right, we're not talking about access to health care. You didn't address one thing Larry said about economics, the wealth disparity, unemployment, poverty. Talk about that, Steve, now. Larry, go ahead.
May I just say before David finishes, he's going to argue that this is because Obama inherited a god-awful economy and he's done heroic things considering how bad things are. Here's the problem with that. Ronald Reagan's economic recovery started from even a worse place. Unemployment was higher. Interest rates were much higher. Inflation much higher. I don't know why they don't call that the Great Recession as opposed to calling this one the Great Recession. Ronald Reagan's conditions were worse. He turned it around by cutting taxes, slowing down the rate of government domestic spending, and he continued deregulation. This president has done the opposite. Billions of dollars of new regulation, raised taxes, a brand new entitlement program, and this is what we've got.
All right, David, I'll give you more for the black communities. D.C., Baltimore, and Chicago. Murder rates last year, 69, now 89. 115, now 197. 209, now 252. So more blacks are being killed, too.
Right, and I think if you're going to point to public policy in any of this, if you think that the president acts alone, I'd like to introduce you to the United States Constitution and the legislative branch. Because a Republican-controlled Congress has to be part of the picture. You can't tell me that the president is the only element of government here. Are there failures? Of course there are. So let's start pointing fingers. I'm going to point some fingers at the Republicans who refuse to pass an infrastructure bill that would create 12 million new jobs. I'm going to point fingers at Republicans who allowed for the militarization of police, and that's what we've got in our cities.
The militarization of police. The black communities yesterday were begging all over national TV, please send the cops in. All over, every major city, because their kids are being killed, and you're complaining about the militarization of police.
If you're going to cast blame on government, let's talk about the whole government.
Yeah, I am talking about the whole government. And you blaming the police is symptomatic of the whole government, Democrats.
Or for that matter, let's talk about Donald Trump and what he would do.
All right, well, you'll have to ask Donald Trump that. We're coming back, folks. More of the panel. Don't go away. All right, folks, part two of the Malzberg panel with Larry Elder and David Goodfriend. David, all this talk about Joe Biden getting in the race and, Hillary faltering in the polls, the excitement just doesn't seem to be there. Do you think that Joe Biden will actually mount a challenge to her?
Well, I don't know anything other than what I read in the press, but I do think that these politicians are born to run. They just are. And it's very hard to get somebody who's been in elective office since he was 29 years old to say, time to hang up your spurs, it's over. That said, you really have to think about the hurdles that Joe Biden would have to clear just to be a contender. And I think that the only shot that he has, and he knows this, the only shot that he has is if Hillary Clinton has a complete reversal of fortune and becomes, just an afterthought, and that has to be like I said, a complete reversal of fortune. She has the cash on hand, the name recognition, 100% name recognition, and incredibly high favorables within the Democratic Party. She is ahead by 20 or more points against any Democrat. So, and that includes polling with Joe Biden. So he has to assume, if he's going in, it's because he's assuming that she's going to have a complete reversal of fortune. But like I said, I would not be surprised if he jumps in.
Larry?
He's in. He's already run twice. It's now or never. Hillary is vulnerable. He sees her rising negatives. And Bernie Sanders has served as his Gene McCarthy. He's going to show how vulnerable she is. He's going to get in. I don't think he's going to get the nomination. I think it's still Hillary's to lose. But I just don't believe that Joe Biden can sit there and watch this candidacy flounder without him jumping in.
David, I mean, John Sununu earlier said that the Democrats are scattering. I mean, there are a lot of big Democratic donors and others who are looking at Hillary and saying that, even if she wins the nomination, she's a terrible candidate. There's no excitement. She's not new and fresh. She's old and stale, and she's running a terrible campaign.
John Sununu, thank God, does not advise the Democratic Party, and of course that's what he's going to say. Let me tell you what I see. In head-to-head polling, and don't take my word for it, go to realclearpolitics.com, which does an average of all the polls. What you see is that against every single Republican candidate, Hillary wins. But
no, that's not true. Not in various states.
Realclearpolitics.com.
The average might be there, but if you look at the latest polls in 3 key swing states, Hillary loses to 3 Republican candidates.
Here's the key point. The #1 Republican candidate today by far is Donald Trump, and yet he polls the worst against Hillary Clinton nationally. So what does that mean? It means that whoever is most popular in the Republican Party is actually who fares worst in the head-to-head national election against Hillary. That's a real problem for the GOP.
Larry?
Every argument that David has made, the donors are aware, and many of them are still on the fence. They're worried about her negatives. They're worried about the email scandal. They're worried about the Clinton Foundation. They're worried about Juanita Broaddrick, the woman who alleges that Bill Clinton raped her, and 2 weeks after that, Hillary allegedly verbally intimidated her. They're worried about all of those kinds of things. This is a moving picture, and Steve is right. Hillary's behind in 3 or 4 swing states.
All right, let's move on real quickly, guys, to a Navy official telling Fox News that punishing a lieutenant commander who used an unauthorized weapon to fire back at the gunman in Chattanooga who killed the 4 Marines and the Navy sailor may face consequences, legal consequences, because he was using a gun that was unauthorized. Is this the epitome of absurdity, Larry?
Absolutely it is. And furthermore, one of the dead soldiers apparently had his own firearm as well and used it to fire back. Otherwise, he'd be prosecuted too, except he's dead. This is insane. These people are trained to carry firearms. They're trained to protect us. And then all of a sudden, when they're put in these military installations, we don't allow them to have firearms because we think it'll look unprofessional? Are you kidding me?
What about it, David? I mean, should the president just step in right here or someone and order the Navy to stand down?
Well, I'm a lawyer, and one thing I've learned is that the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, is a different law from what you and I as civilians operate under. We have to accept that. This is a different set of laws. The Uniform Code of Military Justice has express language about when a firearm is authorized and when it isn't. Now, we can talk about whether or not the UCMJ should be amended, but the military has its own legal system. You
don't have to prosecute, though. You don't have to prosecute. He tried to save lives, and he probably did.
In a court-martial setting, actually, the prosecution is a military officer. Right. The defense is represented by a military officer.
Got to go, guys. Larry Elder and David Goodfriend. We'll speak to you again soon. Thank you very much. Up next, folks, we're going to have Give Me Five, of course. But first, Donald Trump remains at the top of the GOP polls, and the media critics say he doesn't have a plan. But he does. He wrote a book that says he will make America great again. It's called Time to Get Tough. Newsmax has a free offer. You go to newsmax.com/Trump book and get your copy now.